most everybody.
No, I'm not doing it.
I think there's one person that hasn't. I,
Did you do an audio check with Margaret?
I did not.
Margaret?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is that good?
You sound good.
Good.
All right.
Excellent.
Here I am.
it's that season time for apple cider. Oh.
Ooh, I better close this door.
Okay. 1 minute 1 minute warning, or actually less than 1 minute. It's actually 9. Oh, it's 9 a.m. Okay.
Welcome to George's World.
Yeah. Welcome to George's World. Okay, Dave, you want to mute everybody? And then let's see.
Bob's gonna I'll take care of that.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Bob, want to mute everybody?
I'm working on it.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Today is September 26th to the virtual program of the Suburban Chicago Apple Users Group. My name is George Brooks. I'm one of the directors of the Suburban Chicago Apple Users Group. I'll tell you a little bit about us. The Suburban Chicago Apple Users Group is a group of over 100 individuals like you and me, because if you're looking at this, you're an Apple person who regularly exchange best tips, practices, and offer ideas to each other about Apple products and technology. You know, some of us are savvy, some of us are not, but hey, we all come here to learn different things, and then we'll all be experts because we all have a passion about Apple stuff. Today, join us. We will have Dave Ginsburg talking about the new Apple Watch and iPad announcements, and also probably some iOS 14 stuff. And we'll also have Margaret Martin, who will talk to us about fixing your internet, because the doctor is in. Okay.
Hey, Dave, would you make me co-host, please?
And then in the background, I have Bob Fairman, there's Bob. He's my right-hand person there. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our first speaker of the day, who is our president, Dave Ginsburg. Dave, for over 20 years, has had experience as an IT professional. He has knowledge of Macs and PCs, and also mobile devices in his profession. He is a subject matter expert on everything iOS. You know, that those Apple devices, the iPhones, iPads, and watches, and TV, the Apple TV. He also has his own podcast, In Touch with iOS, and is a regular contributor of iChart Radio and For Mac Guys Only. So at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Dave Ginsburg. Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, George. Glad to be here. Today, actually, I'm only going to really focus on the Apple Watch and the iPad because I'm going to have a tease a little bit, give you a couple weeks to absorb iOS 14, because we're going to save a lot of that for the iPhone SIG coming up in a couple weeks. So I've got a presentation I'm gonna show real quick and just kind of go through some of the slides here. So let me get the slides up and we'll share and get that going here. If anybody didn't know, I did get the new Apple Watch. If I'm showing it on, if you can see it on my camera here, I've got the blue with the blue band. So I'm gonna show that actually on this PowerPoint here. So let me share my screen here. Okay, everybody can see this, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So everybody obviously got excited. We saw the Apple Watch and the iPad announcement a couple weeks ago. This is the watch that I have, the one in the middle here. This is the blue with the blue, and I actually got the band, as you see here, with the kind of the orange and light blue edge to it. I opted not to go with the solo loop. I'm sure everybody was hearing about the bands. There was a solo loop band, and then there was the mesh solo loop band. And people were ordering them. You had to download that document and cut out the little thing and put your little thing around your wrist to measure it. So then you get the right size. And then of course people were not measuring it properly, and then it would be one or two sizes either too big or too small. Well, Apple in their infinite wisdom at first says, well, you're going to have to send the whole watch back to get to replace the band, which is, I thought, was kind of crazy. Well, they changed course pretty quickly after everybody was pretty much in uproar on social media. So now you can send the band in to get an alternate size. So, but let's just kind of go through the specs here. This here that you're seeing is the Series 6 watch, and a couple of different colors that comes in. Like I said, I thought the blue was just a really hot looking color, so I decided to go with that. Let's talk a little bit about what the Series 6 is offering now. So now it has the blood oxygen sensor and app. I've used it. It's I find it to be relatively accurate. I don't know how, obviously you can't use it as a replacement for any medical decisions when you use this, including the ECG app, which was on the previous models. So you have those two things. You have the optical heart sensor. You have the S6 chip, which is a system in a package, giving you much faster processing. I definitely noticed a huge difference in performance.
Okay.
They've improved the on retina display as far as the display goes. Yeah, it's extremely sharp. I'm also having to get used to, because I was on a Series 4 and I upgraded to Series 6, which I did trade. I was able to trade in my Series 4, and Apple was pretty reasonable, giving me $140 as a trade-in cost towards it. So I felt, yeah, I probably could have got a few extra dollars, but for as much time as it takes to try to sell it, my time's more valuable. So it wasn't too bad of a deal, I thought. The altimeter that's on here is now an always on altimeter, so it's always measuring. You have a compass on here. You also have your GPS, and if you have a GPS with a cellular, you have that as well. And a lot of these other features in here was already there: the fall detection, emergency SOS, international calling. It's an all-day battery. It is very fast charging, and of course we've got Watch OS 7, and it was swim proof. The charging in itself, I've seen it extremely fast because they did add a feature called the sleep tracking, and that was the first thing I was kind of wondering about, if someone wanted to use the sleep tracking, because I'm so used to taking my watch off at night on my nightstand and actually charging it at night. But I'd be so weird to be wearing the watch at night, and then you get up in the morning and there's only 20% left. But I guess what Apple was expecting was the routine to put the watch on your charger when you wake up in the morning to go take a shower. By the time you're all ready to go, the watch is pretty much charged up. So that was what their thought process was with the sleep. I'm going to get into a lot of these details, like I said, in future in the SIG. Right now, I just wanted to give you some overall highlights of what was announced with the watch. Then they also announced the Watch SE. Now this one was more kind of a down to where the Series 3 is, and it's kind of like in between of a Series 4 and a Series 5, but not all the features. You're not going to have any of the health features on there at all. As you see, it's not even listed. Processor is a slightly slower than the S5. You do have the Retina display, but it's not an always on. And a lot of these other features I just talked about are included in as well. So that's the SE. Pricing. So with a Series 6 watch, you're going to start at $399 with the GPS and $499 with the GPS with cellular. And there's different derivatives of the models. Now they are going to add more cost if you decide you like that solo loop or you like the mesh loop. And that was another factor when I decided not to go with that, because it was like, I think, an extra $40 or $50 from the cost. So I really like these Velcro mesh bands. So I was very happy with that. The Watch SE starts at $279. So that's where Apple came in and brought this into this a little more reasonable market, aiming this more towards probably folks, maybe elder, maybe folks that you have your grandparents, folks that don't want to have a lot of technology, and this was a type of watch that might be a lot more affordable and not have to have as many of the features that it really needs. So here's kind of a comparison between the two models. You saw that all the things I just talked about with all these features that it's including. So it's between the Watch Series 6 and the Watch SE. Again, there's the pricing that goes across, including the Series 3. Apple did choose to keep the Series 3, which I was kind of surprised. I thought maybe for sure they might bring back the Series 4, but I guess, with what they're offering on the SE, they didn't think they need to do that. The Series 3, of course, is not going to have anywhere near the features as the other two models in there as well. And of course, there's the pricing for the Series 6. Now, this was a big thing, and I put this in here because everybody was up in arms when they talked about this. Oh my God, there's no power adapter in the box for my Apple Watch. Well, I kind of see Apple's point, because I can guarantee you I can go pull out a box in my closet to the right of me here, and I probably have a box full of those adapters because of over the years, and I'm sure many of us do. So, Apple's being is trying to keep things in the environment, so all these things don't end up in the landfill. So they felt no power adapter. Well, of course, people were like, well, how am I going to charge it? How am I going to charge it? Well, it does include the power puck cable, charging cable, so you will get that, so you don't have to worry. I think most of us these days have devices of some sort, whether it be a power strip. I have a power strip sitting right next to me. I plug into USB anytime I need to charge something. So I think people can find a way of charging it, especially they're going under the assumption probably a lot of people are upgrading from previous version watches, because when I traded in the watch, they don't take the band back. All they do is take the watch, the face itself. So you keep all the accessories. So this is kind of a quick look, and actually what I want to do is actually go out to Apple's website real quick. I know you guys could do this too, but I wanted to kind of give you a comparison of what's going on with the Apple Watch and how different there really is what they offer. So here's the Series 6, the SE, and the Series 3. So you see here that right off the bat, no health apps here, the first two there between the SE and the Series 3, as well as a lot of these other things. It doesn't have the fall detection on the Series 3, but it does have it on the SE of the 6. The other thing that they also talked about is what was called family setup. Now, this is another neat feature that will work with either the Series 6 or the Apple Watch SE, that you can set up your additional watches for, like, let's say kids or additional family members on one single iPhone, because maybe there's somebody who doesn't have an iPhone, but they would like to have an Apple Watch. So you are able to set that up and be able to use it for the purposes of just them having a watch. Now, at first, we had thought when we first heard the announcement, we had thought that this was only going to be supported by the cellular models, because, of course, not only do you want them to have the watch without a phone, well, of course, they don't have any way of calling anybody. So you want them to be able to make a phone call if there's an emergency. So it's probably wouldn't be a bad idea if, in that case, if you wanted somebody to have this and have it for emergencies, by the cellular model, and then you would be able to make a phone call if there was an emergency. But it is a pretty easy setup, and you could set it up through your iPhone, and then you'll end up having like 4 or 5 different watches that'll be connected to just one iPhone. Again, there was the compass and the always-on altimeter. And here's some of the great things to talk about as far as the display. The Retina display is actually, I definitely noticed a huge difference in the image quality. Is really good quality. As you see here between the Series 6 and the SE, it's an always on. And yeah, that's the first thing that may come to you thinking, okay, it's always on, it's going to run down the battery. I haven't noticed any really bad battery issues. They just updated iOS 14.0.1. And because there were some people having some issues with default apps, as well as they didn't admit it, but battery life was, I have noticed this, and I'm sure some of you who have iOS 14 installed now have noticed battery life issues. It was happening the same thing with the watch, because I would notice that I would look at my watch, and my watch had already be down to like 30%, and it was not even through a full day. So they did some improvements on that, but no worries as far as the Retina always-on Retina display if you were to have the Series 6. Then they talk about the different materials and finishes. Of course, the aluminum, that's the blue. The blue is aluminum. Those are the colors that comes in. But you got also stainless steel and titanium. Of course, you're going to pay for that. Titanium, I think, is around $700 or $800 up, and it's limited in its its colors here. So you only have certain colors. Cool thing with the Series 6, you also have a product red. So I know some of you may have got the red watch. I think it's a really cool looking watch. But the SE and the Series 3 are limited to just 3 and then 2 colors here. So, but rest of the stuff, all pretty standard as far as the watch goes. And let me go back to my keynote here real quick and finish up here. Any questions? Is there any questions, George or Bob?
There was, what was it about? Fall detection is in the SE. Is that true?
Yes, I believe.
I think it is. Right. Go back up.
is.
Somebody was just checking.
Yeah. Yes, it is. This right here.
Yep. In the SE, but not in the Series 3. Got
The
it.
Series 3 does not have fall. Yes,
That does not have fall detection. It's an older one. Right. Thanks, Dave.
Because it's an older one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So let's go back and I'll wrap it up, and then we're gonna actually then talk about iPad. So here's the breakdown to all of the watches that are available as far as pricing goes. And as I said, pricing goes up dramatically when it comes to the with the GPS. You start at $199, go to $279, and go to $399. And then here is the pricing with the GPS plus cellular. You start at $499 on the Series 6. And then of course the prices go up if you want to have a much prettier and nicer watch. So, all right. So are we good? No questions on the Apple Watch? I went pretty quick with that.
But, I think we're set. Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. So let's talk about the iPad Air. I was super excited about the iPad Air, and reason I brought this slide up is I wanted to just really highlight. It's awesome to have all these cool colors. I mean, I really love this. I really love this this blue color, and all these other colors. I was always so used to buying an iPad that was a space gray, but it's kind of neat now that you've got 5 different colors you can choose from between between the iPad Air. But let's just kind of dig right into what the differences are really as far as the iPads in themselves. Now the iPad Air, let's kind of focus on that a little bit. Now the iPad Air was pre-announced. It's not shipping, I don't believe, until I believe next month. So it's going to be a little time before it comes out. But the first question that had been asked is, okay, so why would I really want to buy an iPad Pro at this point? The iPad Air is such a nice sweet spot when it comes to what it offers. So this slide kind of really brings out some of the comparisons of what the features are. The A14 Bionic is probably one of the fastest processors that Apple's ever come out with on their own processors. No other iPad or device has it so far. Rumor has it that the A14 is probably going to be in the iPhone 12, and then eventually they may look to upgrade the iPad Pros later. But it'll vary as far as that goes. But if you go over into the comparisons here, the A14 versus the A12Z Bionic, this chip is pretty gosh darn fast. I've got the 11-inch iPad Pro, and it's a 2018 model. The processor is the same. So if you're looking here, you don't have really much of a difference. ProMotion is more for higher end use. So most of us here on this meeting probably wouldn't be too interested in that as it is anyway. But as you're seeing here, a lot of the same things. The camera, I mean, you got the ultra wide cameras. I'm still of a person that, do I really want to be holding up my iPad like this and take a picture when you got your nice iPhone to take pictures? So, but they do have nice cameras. The camera is 12 megapixel in the iPad Air, and then you have the HD camera, the FaceTime HD, which is about the same. Now, the one thing they did put into the iPad Air, which is really cool, is the Touch ID. Well, there's no more home button anymore. Apple has really gotten away from the home button, the button at the bottom. Well, they added Touch ID in the actual power button. So if you touch that button, they actually have that. Right in the power button, so it works back. So Touch ID is back. A lot of people don't like Face ID, so they've came back to it, and it really works really well from what I've been hearing. And they also have upgraded these models, so they have the latest and greatest Wi-Fi 6. Margaret will be talking about internet in a little bit here, and that's a new standard now, 802.11ax. And then if you have a cellular version, it's going to have the gigabit class LTE, which is going to give you a lot of fast speeds if you have the cellular version. Now storage, that's the other thing that they did do. The sweet spot was put to 256, and I think most people are fine with 256. I mean, I have 256, and I think that's more than enough. But there are pros out there who probably would want to go all the way up to a 1 terabyte iPad as it is here. You're going to pay for it. I mean, because I can get the top end 12.9-inch iPad Pro with 1 terabyte storage. I believe is around $1,300 to $1,400. So the price is way up there. So that's going to be a big difference. Now, the other thing they did too is with the iPad Air, they put a nice, like, again, I think this iPad is in a good sweet spot here. It's right in the middle here, and also supports the 2nd generation Apple Pencil. And also supports the Magic Keyboard if you so wish, and other third-party keyboards. So I think, in a nutshell, the iPad Air is a really great choice when it comes to if you're in a market of looking for a new iPad and not want to go onto the low end. They did announce the iPad 10.2-inch, and they just added some updates to it. But that still has the home button in it, and it's still the lower, and that model starts at $329, whereas the iPad Air starts at $599. So here's the pricing. So they're still making the iPad Mini, and the iPad Mini is still a really good, decent iPad, and it's small. A lot of people still like that small iPad. And you see here the base storage for all the models. The Air starts at the 64 gigabytes. The iPad 8th generation is at 32 gigabytes of space. $329 is the pricing. And then you see the 11-inch is $799, and Pro 12.9-inch starts at $999, which is still on the market. So, all right. That was my spiel about both the Apple Watch and the iPad Air. Again, in closing, I think the Apple Watch is great. I've been very happy with it. Let me stop sharing here so you can see me. And as I put it up on the camera here, I think it looks really nice. It's got really good quality, good looking, and I like the colors. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
I don't see anything. Where it's just one we answered already. Two
Okay.
new attendees. Got to get them in. Hang on.
Is there a trade? I just saw Frank pop up. Is there a trade-in for iPads? Yes, there is.
Oh,
As
yeah.
far as I know, there is. Pricing might not be as desirable to you if you trade it in, because I've noticed that the pricing tends to be a lot lower on iPads, and in that case, it might be better. You might be better off trying to sell it on your own with Apple, because Apple I haven't seen them do a great job with the trading values of for iPads versus Apple Watches. So.
Yeah, I thought the
Okay,
$140 that you said they gave you, I thought that was pretty fair.
It's fair. Yeah, that was fair.
And yeah.
I mean, the last watch when I traded in my Series 3 for the Series 4, I got like over $200. So at that time, so that was a number of years ago. So
Yeah, and don't forget, everybody that put it on the Apple Card, you get the 3% off too.
that's right.
Yeah.
And it's looked like Ed and Becky has said they just got their new Series 6 watches.
Cool.
That's exciting.
Okay, what colors did you guys get?
Your mic's open if you want to tell us.
Or you can open your mic.
Yeah, Becky's gonna tell you.
We both got black mesh, and mine
Nice.
is still in the box because I'm still wearing my gardening watch. So,
Okay.
and I didn't want to mess up, and I haven't gone
Oh
to
yeah,
14.
he got the loop. Yeah,
He had the
he got
abilities.
the same one I'm wearing. The
Yeah.
stainless steel. Yeah, the black stainless. Yeah, you're
I
gonna
love
love
it.
that band.
And I've been on the sleep thing. Just to comment on Dave's thing, I think the battery life is better. I had a Series 4 too that I traded in,
Yeah.
and I've been using the sleep thing now for about 7 days or 6 days, whatever it is. And I put it on to charge it last night before I went to bed. I got up this morning. It was like 90. It's 88% now after
Nice.
going all night.
Good
Let me
deal.
answer Bob's question. The iPad Air is using the 2nd generation Apple Pencil because it's magnetic and attaches to it, whereas the 1st generation pencil has the lightning plug on the top of the pencil, and you have to charge it. So
Yeah, so the new iPad, all the iPad Pros,
and the Air,
and the new Air are using the 2nd generation pencil.
yes, which
And
I'm
there
very
are
happy about.
Yeah, there's the iPad Pros were the ones that came out February, March, whenever those
Right.
came out. There's been no update so far. We'll see.
Yeah.
And that's still, is that still Lightning or did they change it to USB-C?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. The Air is USB-C. I forgot
All
to
you,
mention
yeah,
that.
USB-C.
Yeah. So anything from the Air, on both Pros are now USB-C. The 8th gen stayed with Lightning, and the rest of the low end models are Lightning.
So there is that shift is starting to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you're right, George.
All right.
You know, they didn't
Well,
put any wireless
Oh, yeah.
in that, did they?
Say what?
There's no wireless charging in your iPad, is it?
No.
No.
Okay.
Not
It's
yet.
just one of those things that makes you go, hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Dave. And now we will actually turn. By the way, if you're watching this and it's recorded and you're not a member, please don't hesitate to go out to our website at myscau.org and actually sign up to become a member of our group. We'd love to have you. That's myscau.org. Okay. And next, we're going to turn it over to Margaret Martin. And let me introduce her. Margaret provides technical support and tutoring for Apple products in people's homes and businesses. She builds websites for small businesses and profits. She remembers playing with computers when she was basically stuck at home. No, when you had to, take a headset and put it down on the phone. I didn't have one of those, Margaret, but she's been a Mac owner for several years since she had a Mac SE30. That's really going back there, but okay. She began formally providing technical support and training, and she looked up and saw that the individuals in her knitting group actually had iPhones. So she discovered that, okay, let me actually start providing these individuals with support. And she also has joined other groups such as FileMaker SIG to assist those individuals. And she is also a consultant. I'll let her tell you about that. But at this time, I'm going to introduce Margaret, and she will talk to us about the internet. And she's going to be our internet doctor. Go ahead, Margaret.
Right. So let me get set up here to share my screen properly. I was doing a lot of testing with this, so it should work. And we'll switch over to Keynote and off we go. So fixing your internet. This is definitely a big topic. I can't cover it all today. What I'm going to try to do is focus on sort of the tips and tricks that I have picked up that you may not be familiar with. So before we really get into this, I want to see what kind of problems you might be having. So think about if you've got problems or questions, you can put them in the chat and you can actually ask official questions. I might stop partway through to answer some. We're going to sort of play this by ear and see how it goes. But definitely at the end, I've left a lot of time. Hopefully we can talk more generally about problems and solutions that people have found and maybe some other tools that I'm not aware of. So if you want to answer a question right off the bat for me, that would be great. Get used to using the chat function, depending on what device you're using. This is for the Zoom members. Depending on what device you're using right now, you should see the ability to bring up the chat window and just go ahead and type in there. How have your video calls been going recently? Have they been good? Can you see everybody? Are people complaining to you that they can't see you or you're breaking up? Your quality is not good. I know that myself personally, it's been really good until last week. Somebody on a Zoom call told me, hey, you're breaking up a lot. We can't follow you. And that was really embarrassing because here I am, the pro, and yet I was giving people a really bad experience. So I'm going to tell you at the end of the talk what my problem was and how I fixed it. So, all right, if you want, go ahead and share those in the chat. If you're on an iPad, you might need to click the more button to get to the actual chat window. And unfortunately, the chat window kind of hangs up all over the place when you're on an iPad. It blocks your screen, so you're probably gonna have to close it so you can see the slides, but we're gonna go with it. All right, let's get started with the talk. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the basics here. You all know turning it off and on again is one of the basic things you need to do when you're troubleshooting. So we're going to skip a lot of that. We're going to skip are my cables actually the problem? Did I lose power? We're going to jump over those obvious things to talk about some of the more obscure aspects of network and internet connection troubleshooting. If you were at my previous talk this year, you may remember this hand-drawn graphic explaining a network. The inside is what we had talked about on that talk, which is everything in blue here. And I only mentioned briefly about your internet service provider, which is shown in green on the outside. What we're talking about today is the whole piece, not just what's going on inside your house, which we tech geeks like to call the local area network, or a LAN. You may hear me use that word. And also the outside stuff, the wider area network, may be an imprecise term technically for what we're dealing with here, but it works for our chat today. So we're going to be talking about the whole thing, not only what's going on inside your house, but also web servers and services talking to your ISP, and specialized services called content delivery networks. And when they go bad, what happens to your internet? Most importantly, we're going to try and figure out whose problem is it? Because if it's my problem inside my house, I can go ahead and fix it. If it's a problem that exists outside my house, it's not my problem. There's no way I can fix it. The best thing I can do at that point is either pick up a book and do something analog, or maybe I can pick up a phone and yell at somebody. But knowing who's responsible for fixing it will save you so much time, because you don't want to go down the path thinking that it's your problem inside your house, when in reality, it's outside your control. You will waste hours if you can't answer this question. So I'm going to keep coming back to this throughout the talk. And hopefully we will come up with some solutions for everybody that makes everybody happy. Sharing resources, a compromise sometimes has to be taken, or routing around the problem entirely. One of the most important things when you're trying to solve a network problem is to switch to a different network. And this is often overlooked, but if you are having trouble with your Wi-Fi or your internet connection generally, and it's not totally gone, it's just maybe going up and down or behaving weirdly or slow, one of the best things you can do is switch to a different network, which these days for most of us is quite easy, because our phones have a secondary connection to the internet, and that's their cellular connection. So please pick up your phone, use it for the troubleshooting as much as you can. And when you're using it, make sure you've turned off Wi-Fi. Your phone will not automatically switch to cellular for internet if you have a sometimes working Wi-Fi connection. It doesn't always do it properly, but you can force it to turn it off by going into the control center and clicking the Wi-Fi button. The key here then is to remember to turn it back on when you're done. That's the hardest part. Otherwise, you'll be using your cell connection for everything. You could run up data charges. The other tip related to this, and iPhone specifically, is that most internet service providers have their own apps. So I'd like everybody today, if nothing else, go out and find out if your internet service provider has their app. If they do, download it, install it, and log into it right now when you have a good data connection. Then explore the app and see what kind of information it gives you. And if you're lucky, like the Comcast app here, they will actually provide an outage map directly in the app itself. Yes, you can find this on their website, but it will take you lots of taps and searching around when you're already frustrated trying to solve an internet problem. Much better to have the app up and installed, and very easy to find the map when you're stressed out trying to solve a problem. I will say, however, and this is another recurring theme for today, is that all of these services lie about their status. So if you check the outage map and it says, hey, everything's fine, there's no outage in your area, yet the lights on your modem are blinking or not blinking at all, and you know that there's an outage, chances are the app is lying to you. And technically it hasn't just caught up with the system, but they're not reporting the truth. In this case, remember, always remember, if it says it's out, chances are good it's actually out. If it says it's up, it still might be actually out. So it's not a perfect system, but it's one more piece of data we have to use to troubleshoot. There's another series of tools out there that are accessible when you're trying to solve what's going on questions and who's responsible. This website I've used for years. It's still pretty relevant. It's called Down for Everyone or justme.com. And it does basically just that. When you visit this website and you type in the search box, for example, google.com, and you click the or just me button, it will go out and search and try and figure out if that particular website is up or down. That's all it does. One thing, but it does it great, and it will solve a whole host of problems. When Facebook is acting weird, you can just quickly go to a website and check, hey, is Facebook up or down? But again, remember, if it says it's up, it still may be partially down. It's more like if it's down entirely, it will be reported here. And then you can stop troubleshooting because it's not your problem. In addition to those generalized trackers, services nowadays often have their own web pages on their own websites reporting problems. This is Apple's system status page, which over the years has gotten a lot better. It's a lot more detailed. As you see, this all the different areas are listed separately. And if they are not available, you'll have, I think it will go between yellow and red if the system is totally down or the service is totally down. And these links in blue are actually links, and I've clicked on this one and you can see there's additional information about those resolved issues. I have found that this system status page is useful but limited in that it lags way behind what the actual outage is. So again, if you are having trouble, maybe your photos aren't syncing across all your devices, check the system status page. If it says that there's a problem, then there's a problem with Apple's service and you can stop troubleshooting. You just wait until that's fixed. If the system status says that Apple's photo service is fine, then you have some more digging to do because there's a good chance it's lying. And tomorrow the actual outage will be reported. And that I got caught in right here. The App Store was down for a little over an hour. And during that hour, it took me almost a full hour to install one app on my parents' Apple TV. And I had checked the system status page during that time and everything was reported fine. It wasn't until the next day when I went to make this graphic that they reported, hey, there was an issue during that specific period of time. So again, useful but not definitive information. System status pages exist for a lot of services. Netflix, Google, Zoom even has their own. I really recommend that the services you use find their status pages and bookmark them. Throw them all in a single folder in Safari so it's there when you need it and you can quickly check. It can be a pain to find some of these. So I've posted these links in the discussion board. I will also have them listed in an upcoming slide so you can take a screenshot of it. And please feel free to email me to ask me and I will send you a list for all these services. And if one of the services you use isn't listed there, poke around their website or just do a Google search. And the main thing to look for is service status and the name of what you're looking for. And that will often bring you directly to the page. These are the ones that I've just gone through in the talk. I'll give you a couple of seconds there if you want to do a screen grab, and we can go back later and I can navigate back to these slides later in the talk if you want to. All right, we're going to move on now and talk about some other tests you might do. A lot of people think speed tests are going to give them all the answers they need to solve their problems. Speed tests are definitely a useful tool. This is one that I use frequently, mostly because it's easy to remember, fast.com. It's now owned by Netflix, which is fine. But there are problems with speed tests. The first problem is they test your whole network, not just your local network at home, but they're also testing your connection to the outer world, the wider area network, and they're testing it all at once. They only give you a snapshot of information at a single point in time. So if your internet connection is going up or and down, or it's slow and then fast and slow and then fast, you could catch and run a speed test at a time when it's fast, which is not really giving you the most accurate picture of what's going on. And finally, they lie. They do lie in the same way that all the other stuff we've been talking about lies. So there are some workarounds for some of these problems. The big one for testing your entire network is you can bypass your network if you connect a computer directly to the modem itself. Now, I'm not sure if you can connect an iPhone through an Ethernet adapter to your modem and have it work, but you definitely can do it with a computer. It's not hard to do, except that you have to crawl around and disconnect cables. And you may have to power cycle both the modem and your computer to get everything working. But if you run a speed test when you're directly connected to your network, basically you're testing, is this somebody else's problem? Perhaps it might be your problem if you own your modem, but generally it's just testing the wider area network. So your internet connection and whatever site you're trying to connect to, taking your whole network out of the equation. You can't get around a speed test doing a snapshot at a single time unless you do continuous monitoring. There are some apps out there that will do this. Obviously, it's not completely continuous, but you might do it once an hour, things like that. Those are more advanced techniques that typically we don't need to use. But there is a geeky tool, which we're going to talk about later. I'm going to show you how to do a ping test, which is not really a speed test, but it is a way of continuously testing your connection to a remote computer. And that can be really helpful if you've got a connection that's good and then bad and then good and then bad, or if you think there might be some kind of interference happening in your house directly, you can set up a ping test to run and then see if you can cause the interference, the thing that you suspect is causing interference, and see how it affects the ping test results. But I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And finally, they lie. There's not a lot you can do about that, except perhaps more tests and varied tests, keeping in mind that a lot of these speed testing services are rebranded and resold under different names. So if you are going to do different tests, make sure they really are independent of one another. More importantly, you want to be looking for changes, not absolute numbers. In other words, you need to know what your speed is on a good day. And you should write that down. I highly recommend people have a note in the Notes app that just sort of has all this information in one place, so it's ready to go if you ever have a problem. So run a speed test and sort of know what your typical connection is. Then when you think you might be having a problem and you run a speed test, you can compare it and find out, is that really the case or is something else going on? You can also compare your speed to promised speeds. So what is your internet service provider saying it's going to give you? This is a little tricky because the companies often don't make it easy to find this information. First thing you're going to need is your bill for your internet service provider. On that bill, you should have information about what package you are paying for. Once you have the exact name of the package, you can go to the website for that service provider and look up, it takes a while sometimes, but look up what the speed should be for that particular package. And make a note of it on that same note, what you should be getting according to the package and what the internet is telling you. All right, I'm getting a report here that my internet is unstable. Is anybody having any problems hearing me?
You were out for just a
Perfect
couple of
timing.
seconds, Margaret. You froze.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
Well, then we're going to keep going forward. Great. Okay. And finally, after comparing it to promised speeds, and again, if you're not getting the promised speeds, you definitely should be picking up the phone and yelling at somebody. There are certain hardware services, for example, Eero monitoring. That is, they run speed tests regularly for you and theoretically report back when there's a problem. And this is what the Eero app looks like on my phone. And on the right here, you see the activity that it was recorded. At this point, it's only the fastest upload. It used to give more information, but they now decided to hide that for whatever reason. But the point is that it's continuously checking. And if something goes wrong, my phone is supposed to alert me about this. And this is the Eero app because I'm using the Eero mesh network to run my local network. All right. We're going to switch gears a little bit here, and I'm going to step back and talk a little bit of topics so we have the right terminology to understand the next types of troubleshooting you might attempt. The first is understanding what an IP address is. You don't have to know the details, you just have to be comfortable understanding the concept. IP means Internet Protocol. Who cares? We call it IP addresses or IP numbers. This over here on the left is an example of an IP number. Because computers only understand numbers, they don't understand words, we need some way to go from what we as humans understand as google.com to what the computer network understands, which is numbers. So this number here is an IP number, and it refers to Google's computers or series of computers. It's more, the numbers on the left, and as you go to the right, they get more specific. So this might be the, different broader parts of the network. And as you go down, you're getting more specific information. We don't need to know any of that. What we need to know is that there's a specialized service here called a domain name server that is responsible for doing this translation. Essentially, domain name server is doing what's called a lookup. So a DNS lookup. It's like a big phone book or address book that connects google.com to the right computer. And you can see right here, if you think about it, if something goes wrong with your DNS, your internet connection is going to have trouble because it can't do the translation. Now, DNS happens at, can happen at a number of different places. So we're also going to talk about domain name servers and how you can change your DNS settings if you would like to, especially during testing. I'm not going to go through an explicit thing unless you are interested and want me to do it. We'll handle that in the questions. But keep in mind, DNS can go wrong. It's usually provided by your internet service provider and you don't have to think about it. But it's one more thing that can get screwed up. But back to IP numbers. Oh, sorry, quick aside. DNS servers are computers, so they have their own IP address. These are some examples of free services out there if you don't want to use your internet service provider services, or you may want to use these during testing. Obviously, the ones from Google and Cloudflare are really easy to remember. These are sort of the go-tos that tech people will quickly switch to see if that fixes the problem. If you're more privacy oriented, you might be interested in looking at things like OpenDNS. You can decide if that's a service that is of interest to you. Obviously, more complicated numbers to remember off the top of your head, but once you enter them and use them, you don't have to retype them. But I like using these Google numbers or the Cloudflare numbers when I'm doing testing because it's easy to type, easy to remember. All right, so I've mentioned IP numbers. Every computer has its own IP number. All of your devices on your interior, your local network have an IP number. And this is showing you how to find this information for an example, an iPhone. Because the connection is, or the IP number is dependent on how the device is connected to the network, this information is under Wi-Fi. So if you go to the settings app and look at Wi-Fi, you will see which Wi-Fi network you're connected to. It's have to be my home called London. And then if you tap the information button, the I button here, you will get a lot more information about the network. One of the things is the IP address for that particular device. Here that it's 192.168, that's 7.109. 192.168, you will see that locally for every single one of your devices on your local network. This is the number that's used for historical reasons. I'm not going to go into the detail. Know that you will see that over and over. And again, this is the general notation that's saying this is my network. The 7 and the 109 are specific to this iPhone itself. You can find this information on your Mac as well. And now I'm going to switch out of this to show you exactly how you do this. There are a couple of places you can find the IP address. I'll show you the basic one in system preferences. And then we're going to talk a little bit about network utility, which is a utility that is built into the Mac operating system. It used to be in the applications folder where it should be. However, Apple in its wisdom has decided to move a bunch of utilities deep into the system library for some reason. This is technically where it is located. You're never going to remember that. I certainly don't. What I do is I launch it by going to Spotlight. So I need to switch out of Keynote. And now I'm going to launch Spotlight and search. Well, first we're going to open system preferences. And I'm going to show you how to find the IP address really quickly for your Mac. And in system preferences, it is in the network button as you would, or network tab as you would expect. For this device, you need to make sure that you have highlighted on the left side the actual thing that is connecting your computer to the network, shown by the green dot here. And when you do that, you get the IP address. And you see, again, we have 192.168, but the last two numbers are different, 7.37. And that's because we're now looking at information for this particular computer. All right, that's system preferences. If you ever need to know what the IP address is for a particular computer, that's great. But I'm gonna also show you another place that is located, and that's in network utility. So I'm going to launch Spotlight and then start typing network utility. There it is. I'm gonna launch that. The first page that comes up is the overall info page. And right here is your IP address. Notice that this is showing me a different one because I have Wi-Fi selected. In fact, I'm not using Wi-Fi, I'm using, I think, the Belkin. Yes. Belkin adapter here for my connection because it's going from USB-C actually to Ethernet. And you see here's the IP address 192.168.7.37. Now, fine, you have an IP address. What can I do with that? This is where we get to the thing I mentioned earlier, ping. Ping is a network service, a little app that runs. It's built into pretty much every computer around that does one thing and one thing only. It allows you to send a series of packets of information to any computer that you specify, and that computer then sends those same packets back, along with a little statistical information about when it received it and how much data it got. That's all it does. So for example, I can ping google.com right here. So all I gotta do is type it in. Now we're gonna be nice and only send 5 pings. I'm not gonna send an unlimited number of them. And run that. And it will take just a few moments to collect the data, and you will see at the bottom, so these are the results of all the pings that were sent out and returned, but on the bottom are the statistics. And that's really what we're looking at here. It says we sent 5 and we got 5 back. Great. And 0% packet loss. That's a really important number. It should almost always be 0%. If you're seeing any kind of packet loss, you have networking problems. The final line down here gives some statistics. So minimum, the slowest, the shortest time, the average time, the maximum time, and the standard deviation. It's all kind of run together here. But the important thing is that we're looking at this number here, which is 186. Okay, that probably doesn't mean much to you. The key here is to know what it looks like when you have a good connection and know what it's like when you have a bad one. And that you do by comparing. So if you go today and run a ping test, you can see what it looks like when things are sort of working, and you get a sense of how long it really should be. More importantly, perhaps, is that you don't want to see a lot of variation in the length of time it takes to send that ping out and to receive it. Now, by a lot of variation, I mean 100-fold, 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold. If it's a variation, you know, if it's 386 plus or minus 183, that's fine. When I'm looking at, it's not 386 plus or minus 10,000. That would tell me I have a pretty good connection. It's going up and down. But you'll notice here, when I did the ping test, I pinged something outside my network. So again, like a speed test, it's the same problem. It's not telling me where the problem is if I saw one, because I'm testing both inside my network and outside my network. So this is why knowing IP addresses of devices on your network is really cool, because you can do a ping test within your own network. So we're going to ping my iPhone, if I can remember the name, and it's 192.168.7.109. We're going to name 5 ping test. Here we go. And you notice the last numbers, I don't know if you can read these, but they're much shorter, as you would expect, because it doesn't have to go out to the broader internet. It's just on my network. All right, we sent 5 packets, we got 5 packets, 0% packet loss. That looks excellent. And we have 19 milliseconds plus or minus 17 milliseconds. That's great. great. That looks pretty stable to me. So a ping test is a really geeky thing. It's very easy to do. You can't break anything by running it. I highly recommend that people who are interested in this learn how to do this and just try it when they're, especially when they're having trouble. The other cool thing about a ping test is that you can set it, especially in your local network, to maybe do 100 pings, which will give you, a decent amount of time to sample over with. And if you think you might be experiencing interference, like perhaps somebody keeps knocking you offline, well, ping test up, start it running, then go use the microwave. When you're using the microwave, does your time radically increase? Do you start to lose packets when someone's using the microwave? Now you know you're causing that interference yourself, and you've directly connected it to bad work performance. Is very cool. So again, these are rare cases that it might happen, but this is so easy to do. You break your computer by doing any of this. I will say that you can ping a lot of servers out there, but for example, I don't think you can ping apple.com. I believe they stop you from doing it. So this is what you're going to see: request timeout if you're trying to ping something and it can't be found, or the server you're trying to connect to is refusing your connection. Nothing bad happens, it's just not going to work. And you see right here, we've got 100% packet loss. Great. Doesn't surprise me. Apple's closed, Google's open. I always search Google. It's easy to remember. And if I need to do a ping test out on the broader area, it's easy to do. There are some other things network utility can do. None of this will break your computer, so feel free to poke around and try and figure out what these other tabs are doing. Look up will do the basic translation that a DNS server does, but in reverse. So if I type in google.com, I get that series of numbers that I showed you on the earlier slide for an IP address. Traceroute can do a similar kind of thing in that it's actually going to report back every single computer it goes through across the network as it tries to, hang on, I gotta let my cat out of the room. And sometimes this will tell you some information about where your connection is breaking down, but usually it means it's nothing you can do about it. So it's of limited utility. All right. I think we're done with that. I'm going to leave this open in case we want to come back to it. Oh, there are a few other things you can do on the info page. You might be seeing send errors on your network. I'm less concerned about send errors than receive errors and collisions. If you're seeing a lot of receive errors and collisions, that's another indication that your local network, again, I think it's only local that this is reporting. Well, it might be broader too. Anyway, it's a warning sign that something is a problem within your network itself. All right, let's go back to
Margaret.
Talked about networking. Yeah.
Margaret, I'm going to burst your
Yes,
bubble just
go
a
ahead.
little bit. Network utility is deprecated in Big Sur. No more network utility. So you'll have to adapt.
Nothing. Oh, this is, I mean, it's a basic thing. It's you can do it on the command line. It's just much nicer to have
yes,
this.
I know. It's
nice
deprecated. Sorry.
So what's the replacement?
Everybody practice now.
Yeah. The terminal is your friend until someone writes us if we find another utility.
That kind of
Right,
explains why
right.
Apple's hidden it over the years, so you can't find it as easy.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why they moved it.
But you know, there's other stuff in here though. Look, DVD player. I mean, I occasionally do use that. I don't plug a DVD player
they're
in, but I
hiding.
have
They're
files in
deprecating
that
a lot of
format.
stuff. So sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, network utility is
well,
definitely
okay.
gone now.
All right. Big Sur is not here just yet, so I'm
Not yet,
still
not
under
yet.
the wire. All right, I got I got a few things, a few other tools to share with you, and then I will switch over to questions. NetSpot is a fun little app that I played with this week, mostly for its feature that allows you to build a map of your network quality in your house, for example. So you can upload a floor plan, or you can actually draw it within the app and then wander around your house with your computer. Now, this is a Mac app, with your computer, sampling your network at a bunch of different places, and it will draw a nifty little map. Now, I'm showing you here the signal to interference ratio because it was the one that I thought was the most interesting to look at. This is a weird scale. Red over here at the bottom, I don't know if you can see this, but red is good. It's got a little thumbs up, and blue is bad. Not how I would have set my color scale, but basically saying the red thing means that the signal to interference ratio is good. And that's what you would expect, because these icons here mean that my that's where my wireless access point is located. And again, it gets a little good better here around this wireless access point. So you can see there definitely is some variation in the image. This would be a kind of nifty tool if you really didn't understand what was going on in your house and maybe how many wireless access points you needed to do. It's a little time consuming. It took me about 45 minutes to wander around sampling everywhere. And keep in mind, this is only a pretty much two-dimensional map, because I was trying to hold the laptop at the same height. To really do a good job, you need to do several layers, maybe 2 or 3 layers at least, to do sampling, better picture of how the signal is varying height-wise in the spaces, because of course we live in 3 dimensions. But as you can see, the further away you get from my wireless access points and the more thick walls you have to go through, my signal interference, the interference from signals gets worse. And on the porch, it's definitely the worst. And I suspect my neighbors have a wireless access point up here, and that's causing part of this decay. But it could also be that it has to go through multiple lath and plaster walls, and especially on the porch, there's aluminum siding on the outside. But you can download this app. If you run it in the free mode, you can't save or export any of the data. You can save a scan and only look at it within that spot. This is just a quick screen grab I did of it to demonstrate it. You can pay for it, and then you can export it, all sorts of these different formats. It's a very powerful app, but it's definitely fun to play with as well. And it does give you the ability to look at a big grid of all the networks your Mac can see and sort them by any one of these features. Here I've sorted it by the signal to noise ratio. That's the most important. And you see all my wireless access points listed here are all at the top. London is me. Each of my Eros has 2 radios in them, and they are listed separately here. So that's why you're seeing a ton of things, even though I only have 2 on this floor. And you can see some of my neighbors creeping in, and you get a sense of how much signal might be interfering with you, and perhaps in the olden days, what channel they're on. We don't really choose channels that much anymore, especially if you're running a mesh network. The idea is to let the computer do it for you. Not that this computer, but in your mesh network, do it for you. But if you're consistently seeing problems, this is a great little troubleshooting tool. And you can wander around with this live. It'll just keep testing over and over. And you can see how these numbers change depending upon where you are. So this part of NetSpot is completely free to use. It's very useful when you're trying to figure out, why is the Wi-Fi so bad when I sit in this one particular location. Nothing like this exists for the iPhone. Oh, I will say, there's one final thing that I want to share with people. If you're having any kind of weirdness on your iOS devices, reset network settings can solve a lot of them. This is in the settings app under general. There's a whole thing for different things you can reset. And one of them is a very mild one called reset network settings. Basically, anytime your phone is doing anything that has to do with a network, if it goes wrong, resetting network settings can fix that. For example, my mother had a problem on her phone, would consistently not notify her about new text messages, but only the sound notification would fail. And I would play around with her phone and get it working, and it would work for 3 days, and then it would mysteriously stop again. This went on for months. Last month, I reset network settings as sort of a last-ditch effort, and that seems to have fixed the problem. It has not recurred. Now, it might come back again because I still haven't figured out exactly what's causing it, but this solved it. And I think it's related to the network because it's a notification that's coming in when something is happening on your network. I don't know why particularly it was just the sounds that were stopped, but this fixed it, and that's really what we care about, is getting the solution that will take you to the end. All right, I think I have a summary page here of what we talked about in the last part of the this talk, which was network utility, which unfortunately won't be with us for too much longer, and then NetSpot from netspotapp.com. Those are Mac utilities. iOS has very few options. Apple does not make all this information about the signals that your device can see. They don't make that available to the user. So although there are network scanning apps for sale on the iOS App Store, they're very limited and often they're mislabeled. The two I've shown here, he.net, Network Tools, and Fing, are two that I personally have used. Fing has been around for a long time. Unfortunately, they really do a hard sell to make you buy their Fing box, which gives you a lot of network information, that the box that sits on your network. It's cool, but it's kind of overkill for the average user, and you get a lot of ads for it if you use their app. he.net Network Tools is incredibly detailed. It has a lot of geeky features because it's written for professionals. It requires using additional tools to do full network testing, but it does have the ability, like Fing does, to do a ping test. So it is possible with both these apps to run a ping test directly from your iPhone, which is kind of a nifty thing. If you're having problems with your phone, you can just run that test right there. You don't need to go sit down at your Mac to do it. So I put the name of he.net Network Tools in there. If you search for that, you will find the right app. If you search for Network Scanner, you will find a lot of junk. So be careful when you're searching for these things. If you want links directly to the apps, I'm gonna try and post that in the discussion forum, or you can email me directly to get to those links directly. I think the final review is, remember, we're trying to figure out whose problem it is. And we talked about checking service status pages, running speed tests, the pros and cons, what an IP address is, why you'd use it, ping testing, both LAN and WAN. We talked about NetSpot for mapping out your Wi-Fi. And finally, my favorite, reset network settings on iOS. And I did mention briefly DNS. If you want me to go into that, I certainly can, but we can also talk about broader things and other tools people might have used that you might have come up with.
And we have some questions when to get going here whenever you're ready.
I think we're good. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
So you can see my face. If I need to go back to demonstrate something, I can, but let's open it up.
So one of the first one is from Jeff. Is there any security concern with anyone knowing IP addresses for your devices? So your internal LAN IP addresses?
No, because theoretically, all of your traffic is going out through one point, which is, well, it's going first to your router, and your router is the thing that's controlling all the traffic on your network.
Right.
And depending on how your router's set up,
Hi,
can
I'm Tom McLean. I'm just interested in green energy.
Thomas, you interrupted there for a second. We didn't hear what you said. Tom?
Sorry, mistake.
Okay. So
all right. So
I think the
generally,
question,
I mean, my quick answer is no.
Right. So want me to go just a little deeper, or you want to do it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
So
talk about security.
in the router, in your router is a thing called network address translation, and all of your internal IP addresses inside of your network stay inside of your network. When your device goes outside, there's this thing called NAT. NAT translates that address so that it goes out to whatever you're talking to. And then when a response comes back, your router knows which device inside your network to be translated to. So your internal addresses are hidden from the internet. Okay. 99.999%. There's some other ways, some things where you can make your network, your internal devices accessible from the internet. So people do this for gaming and stuff like that. But for 99% of the time, they're private and they stay behind so you don't see what they are. Okay. Let's see, what's the next question? Frank asked a question. I don't know what it means. How do you sample? So I don't know if you want to unmute Frank real quick, or if he's still here, or we can go on to the next one.
Well, let's see if he's still here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, what was I didn't understand your question, Frank. Go ahead.
When you had the
Yeah, what was it?
diagram of your house up with all the little tiny red dots that
Ah.
you sampled, what did you do to sample?
Right. Okay, so that's within the NetSpot app itself. Basically, after you import the map of your house, it asks you to pick a starting point, and you physically take your computer over to that starting point and you hit scan, and you stay there until the computer says, okay, I'm done scanning. So it's actually the app itself has to be running, and you sample it at that point, and then you move to another location and you hit the scan button again, and then wait until it finishes the scan. So the app itself is running the scan every time you initiate another one. And as you're mapping it, it puts up these big sort of green circles. And the idea is that you make sure the circles are all connecting as you wander through your house, so it gets adequate coverage. It's a very intuitive interface as you go. So you can't do it all at once. So you're going from point to point to point and staying there and holding it. And you need a laptop. Exactly. That's the right. And that's why everybody says, ooh, this is my phone. It would be fabulous, right? Just wander around with your phone. But unfortunately, like I said, Apple doesn't make this information accessible to the user or any app. So you would have to have an external device connected to your iPhone to do it, and those are very expensive, and only professionals really use them. So
or you buy yourself an Android phone. There's a bunch of apps on Androids for doing that. So that's one way to do site surveys. We do site surveys a whole bunch of different ways, but an Android device laying around is a quick way to do a site survey if you do it for a living, not for normal people. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll get the job done.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, it's fun. And you need better coverage. That didn't look good enough to me, Margaret. You have to hire me to come over and do your network for you.
Well, here's the deal. This is how I decide if I have good enough coverage, and this is why I don't get too hung up on numbers. Is it working for me? If it's working for me, I don't care what the numbers say. I have learned to let that go, because you can spend weeks and months of your life tweaking these numbers. And if that's your jam, that's great. It's not my jam. If I can get my Netflix working, if my Zoom calls are good, I'm going to move forward with my life.
Sounds good. Okay. So the next question is from Nancy. She was asking about, is reset network settings for Wi-Fi or cellular?
I believe it wipes out everything, but I'm not sure how much of the carrier it takes out. I read about this a long time ago, so I don't know if this is still the truth, but I think it does actually force your phone to go out and sort of reconnect with your carrier, that is AT&T, Verizon, or whomever. So, but you don't have to do any of that. The only thing you're going to notice is you're going to have to type in your network passwords again. That's the only data you will lose off of the phone, but hopefully you have those written down somewhere. These are key pieces of information we need these days. What is the password for your network? That's the only thing you'll have to type in.
Yeah, and there was a second question: is what are the downsides of it? And it forgets all of your saved Wi-Fi passwords when you do that. So that's the downside.
Yep.
And I'm getting yelled at for suggesting someone get an Android device here on an Apple group.
Well, again, open and closed. I mean, this is where the divide is hitting us. The phone theoretically could provide this information. I think it knows, but there's no way to get at it.
Yeah. And there's another question: is if you don't have your network passwords, how do you retrieve them?
Okay. At some point, you've typed some device. It's possible that they are being saved on your Mac in your keychain, or on your phone in your keychain, which these days on the phone even, I think you can still get to them, but it depends on how it was saved. And if it's legacy, you may not be able to get to it. This is frustrating, I know. I deal with this a lot. And one of the first things I ask my clients is you need to, before I get there, you need to know what the password is for your network. And if you don't, that's the first thing we're going to work on. If it's not in Keychain, you're going to have to dig out the information that came from your internet service provider, because chances are you don't know it because it came with the box, right? You didn't choose it. It was something that was handed to you. So you're going to have to find that. If you can't find that, you need to call whoever gives you internet access. So if that's Comcast or AT&T, and say, hey, look, I don't know what the password is for this. Can you reset it, or can you send it to me? And there are different processes for every internet service provider about how to get that info. But this is important information to have, because as part of troubleshooting, sometimes we need to disconnect things, which means you have to be able to reconnect them. And if you don't have that information, it's not reconnected. Now, I will say one side thing about networks is they are now all synced through iCloud. So networks that your Mac has previously seen may be showing up on your phone, even though your phone is never connected to those networks. It is not sharing passwords unless you explicitly tell it to at the time, but it is sharing the sort of the name of that network everywhere. Is what next networks you've got there, and call the company that gave you the service, or call your tech support person and we can dig it out for you.
And a lot of times, somebody mentioned, a lot of times these days now, they're all, if you didn't change them, it's on the label on the bottom of the wireless router that you get from your ISP typically, that kind of stuff. And there's a question from Frank here, which is the indeterminable one. It says, I'm supposed to be getting 1,000 Mbps. I get that only if the Mac is connected to the modem. My Ethernet router only gives me 200 to 500 megabits. Is there anything I should do? Yes, get a new router.
Well, but think about it. It could be the cables. Don't forget about that.
Well,
it's not the cables. I'm in the same boat. I mean, I have a Nighthawk Netgear router, and when I plug directly in, I get the 1 gigabit speed wired with my Mac. But if you're on wireless, as you go through beyond the network, it's gonna be a lot slower.
Yeah, right. Well, that is true. If you're wireless, yes, you're right.
But I agree with Rob. The routers make a big difference, and it all depends on what his router is. If it's an older router, it's probably not able to handle that kind of speed.
Well, it's a lot more complicated than we may want to go into here. But in fact, most wireless networks cannot achieve gigabit speeds.
Right.
They can't. They're not designed to do that.
No, I get that with wireless, but I'm Cat 6 Ethernet cabled throughout my house for my Apple TVs and stuff, and it's not giving me the speed I should get through an Ethernet cable, right?
Okay, so you need to take a Mac that's a gigabit capable Mac or a gigabit capable device other than an Apple TV, and see if you get those speeds at the end of that cable, because it could be the switch or it could be the device. So for instance, I don't know that you can get that kind of speed through an Apple TV, for instance. Okay, I don't know that it can actually process it at that level. Okay, so it could be the device, it could be the switches, it could be in the wiring. So I think you're using an iMac. You can't kind of like pick it up and take it to the other room, but get a long Ethernet cable, $5 wherever, and take that Ethernet cable and plug it in and plug it into your Mac and do the speed test on that long cable and test the switch ports around your house or something like that. I have found bad switches and bad cables and bad connectors. Could be any of those things.
Connectors.
Yeah, I took your advice. I mean, they're all gigabit switches.
Yeah. But if they're daisy chained, so if it's switch after switch after switch, you'll lose some speed because each switch is going to consume it. Okay, so in a good network design, you don't daisy chain switches unless you absolutely have to. So I have a master 24 port switch here at my house, and 99% of all of the connections are direct back to that single switch. Okay. And that's and then that switch connects to the router and so forth. The problem is that most of the most of the modem, so I just have a modem. I don't have a router. So I only have one. I don't have as many levels of switching as would happen to some people. So you end up with all of these devices in the middle. And what you may have to do is to take one of those out and move yourself back till you find the one that's slowing you down. This is a time consuming pain in the neck process.
This is why I don't do this.
Well,
I operate
does.
on the,
All right, how much are
on the
you?
basic principle.
By the way, there's another question. There's another question in the chat. Is there any cure for buffering on Zoom calls? Well, one thing that we were just talking about, and I've experienced this with quite a few people, instead of being wireless, be wired.
If you can, yep.
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah. If you can.
I always turn off
And
my
that reminds me, I
Wi-Fi and
forgot
turn
to-
off any backups that are going, you know, like if you have Dropbox or any of those the services running, got to turn those off. And
yeah. Well, you may have noticed that we were losing Margaret a little bit off and on. The other thing that we have found is that sometimes you just have to drop and reconnect to Zoom. Sometimes that solves that. It's sometimes luck of the draw.
Well, and then also don't forget, if you're living in a home with other people, tell them when you're on your Zoom calls, no Netflix.
good luck.
Yeah, it's important to remember for the for the Zoom call that I was having trouble with last week. Ultimately, it was what you would expect. There was something else using the bandwidth, and it was using bandwidth up because I was doing an online backup. Okay, normally I remember to turn that off. There isn't an explicit way if you use Backblaze to turn it off beforehand, but I run an app that will block that service, and I can do it selectively. However, I was using Zoom on my iPad because this was a casual call with friends. I had forgotten that my laptop had been set up to not go to sleep because I was doing some other troubleshooting, and it started to do a backup, and you know, four rooms away in my house, completely unbeknownst to me, and it was eating all of my upload bandwidth. And that's the other thing to remember about Zoom calls is it doesn't matter so much what your down is. If your call is breaking up to other people, it's what's going up. So most of us are consuming all the time. We're streaming stuff, bringing it down. That's not going to affect the upstream effect in a broadest sense, right? And if you'll notice, if you do look up your, you know, like at Comcast and say, what are my speeds? What should I be getting? Your down speed is way bigger than your up speed. And especially in our area, the Comcast up speeds are really abysmal. You have to go up to really much more expensive packages to get a really nice big fat pipe going up in this part of the country. And that's just the way it is. So do everything you can to do things over wired, not wireless, to reduce that interference and to get the faster speed, and make sure you're not consuming your upload pipe in ways that you've forgotten about, like Dropbox is thinking in the background, or Backblaze is backing up your entire Mac to the cloud. And if it's really bad, just drop the call, get off the call and reconnect. And often that will fix a problem. That's why I was wondering when I was breaking up, maybe I should just redial in, but it's a bit more tricky when I'm actually presenting.
Yeah, it wasn't bad enough that I stopped you. So it was, there were a couple of lost words here and there and a little bit out of sync. That happens. And it's, you know, life on the internet.
Exactly. I should mention that if people are doing this on a Mac and they're doing this regularly, the app that I use is called Trip Mode that will allow you to block certain apps from using the internet. Yeah. So I use that to shut off everything except what I need for a Zoom call. And it's very easy once you choose all the apps, it's just a switch that you hit. As far as I know, there isn't anything like that for iOS and things like that. But mostly this problem, when you're doing a really important Zoom call, a lot of us are on computers anyway. So Trip Mode is the thing to look for solving that
problem. Trip Mode?
Trip Mode.
Yes.
TRIP.
Name of the app. Okay.
It will save you a lot of money. I think Davis has a question. Davis?
Davis has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one question really quickly. I use Comcast, and one thing that is really important in their mobile app is it allows you to actually identify and connect devices to a certain area in your house that you can literally turn off, and you can schedule like Wi-Fi to go off to those devices at certain times. So if, during the day, I may shut off like 70% of my house to improve Zoom calls. And at night, because we don't have cable in my house, if we're watching Hulu and we both fall asleep, it will literally cut off the Wi-Fi. So it doesn't continuously stream all night, because I literally have had that problem. So that's a really great feature in some of these ISP apps. That is a really good point about bandwidth and bandwidth usage.
Yeah, you have to be a little careful these days, especially on non-business class service and typical home service. You can hit a certain point and they'll start billing you a bunch of extra money every now and then. So you got to watch that. And
Right.
not only what Davis is using only works if you're using the whole Comcast infrastructure. If you have your own router, there's other ways of doing it, but it doesn't work for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, another thing is, don't forget, every once in a while, reboot your cable modem if you're using cable internet, because actually restarting your modem can actually help sometimes with the speeds.
Yeah, one of the guys I podcast with has an old router, and we always ask him when he comes on for recording on Sunday nights, Stephen, did you reboot your router? Because it makes a big difference.
Right.
Yeah, I just saw a question. Trip mode is not in the App Store. I believe that is correct, because it needs access to sort of low-level operations of your computer, which I believe means it can't be sold in the Mac App Store. So you have to get it from the developer directly. Is it tripmode.ch, or did they finally get a better domain name?
I thought it was still CH.
Okay.
Also, Margaret, you were talking about the different status pages for different companies. One thing that I noticed, and also Bob mentioned it, instead of going to the different ones, I go to Down Detector, and it seems to be very good and live. And there's also an iOS app, that's downdetector.com. It's really good. I mean, it tells you about different websites, different companies, different internet providers, wireless providers. It's just a whole host that it's probably more than what you want to look for. But it's really good for finding what is up and what is down.
And I thanks for reminding me about that, George. The other thing is, everybody who's in this area probably has Commonwealth Edison for electricity. Do yourself a favor, download the ComEd app, get your account number, get it into ComEd, and that has outage reporting and everything built in. So you can go into the ComEd app and report the outage, because when you have an electric outage, and that helps everybody. So, and it's real hard to find that phone number when the lights are out on your landline.
Oh, and by the way, if you have a smart meter, you can actually sign up, and it will text you when your electric is out, and text you and automatically it reports it. So you can actually sign up for automatic text alerts when your electricity goes off and when it comes back up. And it looks like, does Tom have a question there, or did you just raise your hand?
No, I have a question.
Okay.
So I read somewhere, and I've never wanted to test it, because occasionally I'll have a problem when I'm away, and the support people will say to reset network settings on my phone. And I know that at least immediately, as you were saying, all of your passwords from all the different places you've been to and go to are gone. But someone told me that if you wait, they'll resync from keychain. Have you ever heard that? I've never believed it, so.
Yeah, the status of that is a bit vague to me. I tried to find some like definitive Apple says this is what's supposed to happen, and I couldn't. And I think because, keychain's been around forever on the Mac, and they've been building more cloud into it. And there is now iCloud keychain, but it's sort of like some of that data doesn't always move to iCloud keychain. And it's not clear like whether all the old data will actually move over. And I do know in the past, we've had problems where old keychain data can continuously poison new stuff. So when you're trying to fix a problem, it'll resync and it'll bring in the wrong information. This used to be a huge problem. I think they've mostly fixed that, but for years you had to do, like if you kept connecting to the wrong Wi-Fi network and you couldn't erase it because you'd drop it, you'd say, forget this network. because it's the slow one. You don't want to use that one. And then the next day it will be back and your phone is reconnected to the slow one. It's because your Mac still has that data somewhere and it keeps repoisoning things. It used to be there was this elaborate dance. I had it all written out. You have to shut everything off, delete it here, resync this one thing, make sure it syncs everywhere, and then slowly add devices. That seems to be fixed. So clearly they have issues and they're still working on them, I think. I have not, been the guinea pig to really try it and see, will these just automatically rework? It gets to security too, if you think about it, right? There's a lot that Apple has tried to do to make sharing passwords on a local network faster. I don't know if you've ever been asked, if somebody new comes to your house and they're trying to connect, sometimes your phone will say, do you want to share the password? And you can say yes, and it'll just talk phone to phone. And the whole idea there is you both have to say yes, and both devices are in proximity. So Apple said, so that's great. So it makes me wonder, well, what do you think about the keychain thing? Are we sort of deprecating that, or is it going to be limited because there's security implications with that? I don't know. I don't have a good answer. I could not find this is what Apple says. A lot of speculation out there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going to let that be the last word. I'm going to do our closeout here. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube or any other recording media, please join us by becoming a member of the Suburban Chicago Apple Users Group. You can join us at myscau.org. Why would you want to become a member? So you can actually join us on calls like this or webinars like this. But also we offer discounts on different Apple and non-Apple related things as far as books and other things. So we have a discount also arranged with the Apple Store. Now, how many places can you go and get a discount at the Apple Store? But also you get to hang out with cool people like all the ones here in this call. But we exchange different ideas, different tips, and also savings. And also we have our online community. As Margaret and other presenters that we have, and that is a member benefit. You don't get that if you're not a member, but I know everybody wants to join us and become a member. But please, let's see, we will meet again in 2 weeks.
We also got the iPhone SIG is on October 13th. I'll be talking
October 13th for our
I'll be talking a lot more in depth with iOS 14, and I figured it'd be a good time to really get in depth with it because a lot of people have it in their hands now, and they'll all be very interested to find out about all the new things.
So we'll meet again on October 10th and October 13th. Also, don't forget our photo SIG is coming up. And when is our next photo SIG?
The next photo SIG is October 21st. That's a Wednesday night.
October 21st.
7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. But as I stated, if you have any questions or anything, please don't hesitate to go out to our website and click on Contact Us. And with that, good day, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Jeff, are you staying? No? Okay.
Frank, I'm here.